Hello and good evening. I'm Amy and I don't normally lead worship, but I had some inspiration, and normally when I have inspiration I tell John that he should maybe lead a worship on a certain topic, and then I thought, well, I guess I could just lead the service. So that's why I'm leading worship tonight. And my inspiration is thinking ahead through the year and thinking about the year, and thinking about the cycles of the year. And normally at this time of year, the Patchwork worship community, members of the Patchwork worship community would be signing the covenant, and that's an annual thing that a group within the worship community decides to do. And it's kind of one way of marking the whole year here at Patchwork. And normally we would be meeting together and have a service, and often the service includes some kind of discussion about covenants and what that means. And then after the service, we would normally have a community meeting, and anybody who wanted to sign the covenant would sign it there. But this is a different year, and it's a completely different kind of year. And in thinking about where we are this year versus where we were a year ago, and like so many congregations, Patchwork has adapted and changed unexpectedly and quickly in the last year because of the pandemic. And even with an average age among the group that has got to be probably in the 70s, it's pretty remarkable that Patchwork has been able to find ways to continue to do worship and to do a service online. I'm sure a year ago, if you told especially some of the members of the worship community that in a couple months they would have to learn how to video conference and how to use Facebook and how to watch the service on Facebook, they would never have believed you and never would have thought that they could figure it out. But here we are. And thinking of the last year, there are quite a few community members who have not seen each other in person for at least a year. There are some who have not seen each other even in a video conference like Zoom in over a year. For some, our interaction has been limited to the comments in the comment section on these Facebook live worship services. But here we are, and we're still community, and we continue to be a community. And I think that's a remarkable thing for Patchwork. And as an added bonus, we have other people who can join us too, who weren't part of the service before, but now, because we're online, they can join in too. So I invite you to be part of our strange, changed community over the internet. Add your name to the list of people in the comments. I see a lot of people are here and present, which is good. And then somewhat separately, Wednesday marked the start of Lent. And so now we're in the season of Lent. My service won't have anything really to do with it, other than kind of the reflection that I've seen multiple times now about how in some ways the last entire year has been a year of Lent. Because of all of the losses and the things that we somewhat even ritually have given up or the intentional practices that we have incorporated into our lives over the past entire year, and making for a year that is like Lent. So, are there any celebrations, which are birthdays, anniversaries, or other special occasions in the upcoming week? I didn't see any on the calendar for the coming week, although there were some the previous week, and some coming up. But you can add them in the comments, and also if you have any joys or concerns to share with the group, you can add them in the comments now. There is a time lag between when I'm actually saying things here and when you're hearing them at home and when you type something, and so just know that there's that lag. So it's good to put your joys and concerns in now, because I may not see them in time if you wait until the joys and concerns time. So now I'm going to move into the main part of our service, which is mostly just going to be a time to reflect on the last year and reflect on the community, the Patchwork community within the last year, what it's meant to be community together in the middle of a pandemic, what it's meant to be community when we are all distanced and separated, and the new ways of seeing community. Hopefully there are some positives in there, along with all of the things that we have lost. So think about what being part of the Patchwork community looked like in the before times. Think about this time last year when we were gathered for worship like usual. We sat in this room in a half circle of chairs. We talked about covenants. We shared communion. We thought about Alan, who was still at home. We ate our usual potluck meal, and maybe Helen brought meatballs. Maybe Jane was still roasting some vegetables in the oven in the kitchen during the service. Maybe I brought some blueberry crisp. And then some of us stuck around for a community meeting in the library afterward, and that's where we signed the covenant. And only a couple weeks after that, everything changed completely. We decided at first that maybe we shouldn't meet together for just a little bit while the spreading COVID emergency got sorted out. And we muddled our way through our first online worship services through Facebook Live. And slowly the weeks became months, and now it's been nearly a year. We've settled into a new routine. We reformed our community, staying in touch without gathering physically together. And the Patchwork community has been through many changes and challenges over its more than 40 years of existence. And it has adapted many times, and even now, even in its older age, it has done so again. So now think about what the Patchwork community looks like today. We're a network of people who continue to help one another. The people who are willing or able to be out in public more, looking out for those who are isolating more strictly for their own safety. We share food by dropping off meals to those who don't cook, or by dropping off ingredients for those who do cook but don't want to go out. We gather in smaller groups when Patchwork is open and providing services to the community. We gather online for worship services and in weekly emails. We have gathered outdoors when it was warmer. We call. We Zoom. We work together as a group to support one another and to keep one another safe and healthy and still connected despite the pandemic. And there are new people who are here precisely because of all the changes. People who are part of our worship community because of the distance. We, like many organizations and churches, have discovered that there are new possibilities embedded in the change. And relationships everywhere have changed dramatically in the last year. So as you reflect on the Patchwork community of a year ago versus what we are today, listen to a series of poems and reflections on the experience of living through a pandemic that I've put together. And it's sort of a variety of just poems and things that I found that I thought added to my reflection of kind of where we are now and how much we never anticipated that this would be what things would look like today. We never anticipated that this would go so long. And we have experienced a lot of different things over the year that are new and different and somewhat incredibly stressful and traumatic. So I'll start with two poems that reflect more on the isolation and the feelings of isolation. The first is Separation by W.S. Merwin. Your absence has gone through me like thread through a needle. Everything I do is stitched with its color. And then a poem by Kathleen Jamie, who and all of these are poems that I found, just recently. So this was one that was posted on Twitter, and Kathleen Jamie is an Irish poet. Trudging again to Lone Oak Tree Lookout, high on the grasslands of Sparrow Crag Hill, pallid winter sunshine enlivens the skyline. Scarves of mist wander the strath below. No sparrows, just a crow cawing from a pylon, fox turds by a tussock, pin-sized bones. There you wait, crooked elder of the pasture. I step inside your shadow, outstretched on shallow snow. Our two forms merge, my lungs breathe within you. May a missel thrush sing high in my branchy mind. And then this is a poem called Dreaming by Jayanthi Reddy. I thought to myself today while doing laundry, what if this pandemic is really just a nightmare and we could wake up and lift this suffering? But my dry hands remind me that I am already awake. It is hard to imagine the size of this infinity, the one that holds all the love of each human that worries. In this fragile life, there is only one thing of which I'm certain. The glowing of each heart is never wasted, and it keeps us warm, and it is everything. And then this is a poem called Daily Briefing by Brian Bilston. And it starts with a parenthetical. Insert today's figures here. X number people have sadly died. Responsibility and accountability have sadly died. Faith in the government has sadly died. Ministerial integrity has sadly died. Following the science has died. The exact cause of death is not yet known, although it is believed to have happened sadly. Basic governmental competence has also sadly died. Confidence that tens of thousands more people may not have to die, sadly, has sadly died. It is thought that had any trust in the Prime Minister still remained, it would, by now, have sadly died. In other news, openness and transparency have sadly died, while satire and irony are also thought to have died at this time in a manner which can be best described as sad. The use of sadly as a subtle deflection of blame is yet to die, sadly. And then in looking for poems somewhat related to the pandemic, I found one list of poetry and suggestions of poems that of poems previously written, and one that I thought was really an interesting new application of an older poem was the suggestion of Robert Frost's poem Mending Wall, and of reading that poem in relation to the ideas of all of the social distancing and separating ourselves from one another for the good of everyone. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of backdrop for a poem that's been around that a lot of people have read and quoted, and so I'll read that for you. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen groundswell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun, and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go, to each the boulders that have fallen to each. And some are loaves and some so nearly balls, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. It comes to little more. There where it is, we do not need the wall. He is all pine and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines, I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only in the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. And the final poem I have is more of a liturgy that I found. It's by Steve Garnis Holmes, a poem about social distancing. And like I said, this one is more of a liturgy and will bring us into a time of prayer afterwards. So you can sort of think of that as you're listening to this poem. Our social distancing is an illusion. We are one. There is no distance, no gap. Isolated in your apartment, you belong. You breathe and it fills my lungs. You weep and my heart is broken. We are one body in many places. In this time of separation, we open our hearts. We allow ourselves to flow out from our bodies in spirit to one another, to the strangers who are part of us, like the Italians singing from their balconies with neighbors. We are all notes of the same song. Love flows where germs cannot. Meditate on our amazing unity. Extend your spirit to include all it includes, the whole world. Breathe in this breath, so threatened, a gift. Breathe out this breath, so released, a gift. Let compassion for all beings flow with it, in and out, refreshing your whole body, the body of Christ, the whole human family, the whole creation. Let love be our body. Let your love take flesh. Make calls. Write letters. And when you come back out, don't stop being one another's body. It's your life. And now I invite you to join in the prayers of the people. I'll share some prayer concerns. If you have others to add, please do so in the comments. And I've seen that some people have added some. Among the prayer concerns to lift up, the weather has been frigid and snowy, bringing difficulties for many in our area and across the country. Patchwork has been closed since the ice storm last Wednesday, so it's been a week and a half that we've been closed. Hopefully next week is better and we can be back to providing services for the community. Prayers for people who are homeless in the midst of all of this frigid weather. Prayers for their safety, and prayers for the people who work to find them safety and housing. Prayers for people with limited incomes for whom this frigid weather may bring unaffordable utility bills while utility companies earn their executives ever increased profits. Prayers to bring a world that is more just. Prayers for the world as we near the point where we are 1 year into the pandemic and the pandemic's impacts continue to be very deep and very widespread. Additional prayer concerns, prayers for the family of Dwight Munzer. Dwight was a volunteer in Patchwork's food pantry for a long time, and he died on February 11th. Sean asked for prayers for her friend Rhonda on the loss of her mother. Prayers for William Bushrod, who is someone that you'd meet if you're here in the mornings regularly, on the loss of his father. Prayers for Phyllis, who fell and broke her wrist yesterday. And I think that is all I see. So we lift these prayers. Amen. And now we've come to a time for gifts. We continue to receive financial gifts for Patchwork through the mail, although, like I said, since Patchwork has been closed because of the bad weather, we have actually not gotten any mail in the last week and a half. So we have not received gifts that way, but I'm sure there will be some. If you have sent financial gifts, thank you. But there are many other gifts that people continue to share with us here at Patchwork. Between keeping us in your prayers, the gifts of people's presence here, the gifts of food for our food pantry, there are many, many gifts. I guess other gifts, I was looking at my list. I have had the gift, even though the frigid weather has been a problem, even for me and for Patchwork and so many people, but I also have had the gift of being able to get my cross-country skis out, which does not happen much in southern Indiana. But that's been one fun thing from the week. Another gift is that Gail was in the hospital early last week and is home and recuperating, and we're glad for that. Also, COVID rates locally are very low, so there is hope. Many people in Patchwork's worship community have already qualified to be vaccinated and have chosen to be vaccinated. And for that, we are grateful. It's one additional layer of protection, even if it's not perfect. But it is one more thing that we can actively do to hopefully make things better. Trying to see if there's any other joys to share. I don't think I see any. And so now we enter a time of communion. So if you would like to join in yourself, you can gather some bread of some kind and some juice of some kind in your home where you are. Communion itself is a ritual of community. It's time to share a meal with one another, even if we are separated and joined only through the wires and electricity and internet networks and all of that amazingness. We are still together. And this week's bread was baked by Darlene and is beautiful. So I'll break the bread. We remember that while Jesus and his disciples were eating on the night he would be betrayed, he took the loaf of bread and broke it after blessing it and gave it to them and said, "Take, this is my body." Then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, and all of them drank from it. And he said to them, "This is my blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for many." and this is nearly the end of the service. I'm at the point of announcements. I do have a few announcements. One is there will be a Patchwork Worship Community Zoom meeting after this service, approximately 15 minutes after the service ends. There was a link for the Zoom meeting that I sent out in my email on Thursday. And speaking of which, if anyone who is, if there's anyone who is not part of the Thursday emails and would like to be added to that email list, please contact me at Patchwork. It's the Thursday email. It has been another addition and another adjustment in this time of COVID. Normally, we would have had a Thursday night potluck meal here at Patchwork, and it was always a fairly small group of us who got together and shared the meal together. And we always started that meal with just a simple service that was just a time to share concerns, joys, and announcements for the good of the community. And so, and that's basically what the Thursday email is. I decided to start doing that as a way to keep us all together. So contact me at Patchwork if you'd like to be added to that email list. And then also in the Thursday email were instructions for if you want to sign the Patchwork Covenant this year. If anyone is interested in knowing more about that, please contact me or John at Patchwork, and we can give you some additional information. Essentially, the Covenant community is a group within the larger Patchwork worship community. Covenant community members sign an annual covenant to say that they will support Patchwork in at least one of many ways. They will also attend community meetings as regularly as they can, and they will attend the annual meeting in September, at which they elect Patchwork's board. So that's kind of a quick overview of the Patchwork Covenant community. Like I said, if you want to know more, contact me or John or any other Covenant community members. And I see Phil. I will resend the Zoom link after I'm done with the service. Yes. So yeah, I'll resend the Zoom link to everybody once we're done with the service. All right, that concludes our service for tonight. And let the people of God say, Amen.